Leqaa Kordia, remember that name, a Columbia University student. She dared to challenge the status quo. She dared to demand a livable future, and for that, she was arrested. Kordia's arrest is a stark reminder of the urgency of the climate crisis. It's a reminder that young people will no longer be silenced. They are demanding action, and they are willing to fight for their future. Kordia's arrest sparked outrage and ignited a debate about the role of fossil fuels in our society. It has put a spotlight on the growing movement for fossil fuel divestment, and it has raised crucial questions about the responsibility of institutions like Columbia University in addressing the climate crisis. This is a story about courage, about conviction, and about the power of collective action. This is the story of Leqaa Kordia and the fight for climate justice. The air crackled with anticipation. Hundreds of students, their faces determined, gathered at Columbia University's iconic Low Library. Their message was clear: divest from fossil fuels. The protest was the culmination of weeks of organizing by student groups. They demanded that Columbia University divest its endowment from fossil fuel companies. These companies, they argued, are driving the climate crisis. Columbia, they insisted, must use its financial power to create a just and sustainable future. The students staged a sit-in, refusing to leave until their demands were met. They chanted slogans, sang songs, and shared stories about how the climate crisis was already impacting their lives. Leqaa Kordia was a force of nature at the heart of the protest. With a megaphone in hand, she rallied her fellow students. Her voice echoed across the campus, her words a potent mix of anger and hope. She spoke of the urgency of the climate crisis. She called out the university's inaction, and she inspired those around her to demand change. But her powerful voice was silenced when university security personnel moved in. Kordia was singled out, her voice deemed too disruptive. She was arrested, her hands bound behind her back. The charges? Trespassing, disorderly conduct, and resisting arrest. Her arrest sent shockwaves through the crowd. It was a stark reminder of the risks associated with speaking truth to power. The fossil fuel divestment movement is about accountability. It's about exposing the moral bankruptcy of profiting from climate destruction. It calls on institutions, universities, churches, pension funds, to divest their financial holdings from fossil fuel companies. The movement's logic is simple. To avert catastrophic climate change, we need to keep fossil fuels in the ground. And that means making it financially and morally untenable for companies to continue extracting and burning them. Divestment is about stigmatizing these companies, it's about delegitimizing their business model, and it's about building a powerful social and economic movement for a just transition to a renewable energy future. Section 5. A global movement gains momentum. The fossil fuel divestment movement has gone global. From college campuses to city councils, from religious institutions to major foundations, the call for divestment is growing louder. Over 1,500 institutions representing over $40 trillion in assets have committed to some form of fossil fuel divestment. The movement has targeted some of the world's biggest polluters, putting pressure on companies like ExxonMobil, Chevron, and Shell. It has forced these companies to defend their business practices and acknowledge the reality of climate change. While divestment itself may not directly bankrupt these companies, its impact is undeniable. It has shifted the narrative, eroded public support for the fossil fuel industry, and created a powerful moral argument for climate action. Section 6. Divestment at Columbia, a history of student activism. Columbia University has a long and storied history of student activism. From the anti-apartheid movement of the 1980s to the Occupy Wall Street protests of the 2010s, Columbia students have consistently been at the forefront of social justice movements. The call for fossil fuel divestment is no different. For years, student groups at Columbia have been demanding that the university divest its endowment from fossil fuels. They have organized rallies, petitions, and sit-ins, urging the university to take responsibility for its role in perpetuating the climate crisis. While the university has made some concessions, such as committing to carbon neutrality, students argue that these measures are not enough. They demand full divestment from fossil fuels, a move they say is necessary to align the university's actions with its stated values. Section 7. Silence from the administration, a deafening response. The university's response to Leqaa Kordia's arrest and the broader divestment movement has been met with criticism. Despite the growing calls for action, the administration has remained largely silent. No public statements addressing the arrest, no concrete plans to address the students' demands for divestment. This silence, many argue, speaks volumes. It's a silence that echoes the inaction of governments and institutions around the world in the face of the climate emergency. It's a silence that perpetuates the status quo, a status quo that is destroying our planet. The university's silence is a betrayal of its students, a betrayal of its responsibility to be a leader in the fight against climate change. Section 8. The Power of Student Activism. Leqaa Kordia's arrest is a stark reminder of the power of student activism. Throughout history, students have been at the forefront of social change. They have challenged injustice, demanded accountability, and inspired generations to fight for a better world. The fossil fuel divestment movement is no different. It is a movement led by young people who understand the urgency of the climate crisis. They are the generation that will inherit a planet in peril if we fail to act. Their energy, their passion, and their unwavering commitment to justice give us hope. It is a reminder that even in the face of powerful institutions, collective action can create change. Section 9. A turning point. Leqaa Kordia's legacy. Leqaa Kordia's arrest could be a turning point. Her actions have ignited a debate about the role of fossil fuels in our society. They have brought the urgency of the climate crisis to the forefront, and they have inspired a new generation of activists to demand a just and sustainable future. Kordia's legacy will be one of courage and conviction. She will be remembered as a young woman who dared to challenge the status quo. A young woman who risked her freedom to fight for a livable planet. Her story is a call to action. It is a reminder that we all have a role to play in the fight for climate justice. It is a reminder that silence is not an option.